I think everybody's pretty much aware of how the budget is prepared. The trustees work with the departments for which they have oversight. The department heads produce the best budget they can. Then the budget's reviewed again, and it's brought down to the point where we can manage the budget within our expenses. It's my suggestion that we begin by having the administrator kind of give us an oversight of what we've got, and then if the trustees agree, what we can do is have each department head sort of highlight what their plans are. So if that's acceptable, we'll just call on Wendy to start us off.
Okay. If you turn to page 8 of 121, that's going to give you your budget summary. Essentially, that's going to show you what we expect to start the year with in terms of fund balances. Then it shows you our anticipated revenues. This is for every fund in the village. And then you go on and you see if there's other financing resources or sources, and those are kind of those savings accounts that we do, that wastewater depreciation reserve, accounts such as that, that we save up to do bigger projects and things such as that. It gives you your total available resources. Then you get to your proposed expenses. That's what we expect to spend for the year. Other financing uses, that's where we're using that money that we've set aside. And you come to your ending balance, which if you see, it shows we're ending in our general fund at about $2 million, which we would expect. We are drawing right now on, we're doing one of our bigger projects this year, which is the Cortland remodel, or the Cortland, what is it called, Craig?
Improvements.
Improvements, sorry. So with that, you would expect that. I expect in the next year to see that jump right back up to where we have been running at about $3 million. One thing I found was interesting is we were a little high. We came in and we were a little high. And working with all the department heads, I did get, everybody was willing to chip in. They were willing to cut where they needed to as much as they could, trying not to sacrifice services to the community. There were a couple of things that, we couldn't get, necessarily felt like we maybe couldn't get rid of. But everybody worked really hard to figure out how to make this work, which shows what great teamwork we have here at the village. We have also a proposal, and I have included with your budgets, a general fund vehicle replacement schedule. And all of the department heads worked to put out, to look at this over 20 years and say, what will I need to replace over these next 20 years, and how much money will this cost us? It's roughly about $500,000 a year when you start adding in ambulances and fire trucks and salt trucks and police cars. But we think we have a way to manage this going forward, or at least we hope so. So we, working with Craig, Craig Loudermilk, the suggestion would be to create what we have now is the Fire and Paramedic Equipment Fund. Ask you guys to change that to just General Fund Departments Vehicle Fund, and we put $520,000 each year into that. We would pull that from the gas fund to kind of support these, and we think that we could make that work over the course of the 20 years. I think we all, as we sat down, we all agreed. Prior to this, the fire department was the only fund that was able to do this. But I think it's a good idea for all of you to look at everything we need, not by department to department, but look at everything. And I will be working with Craig Loudermilk, which I think he's pretty close to having. He's going to look at all of his departments, water and gas and stormwater, just to make sure we have all of our needs met. We know where we'll have to spend, so that when tough decisions have to be made, we know, kind of what we're looking at. Other than that, for the majority of budgets, we have many that have tried to come under. I know in administration we are down. There's maybe a couple that are up, but they're not up by a lot, and I'll let each department head speak to their own budget. I think that they all have reasons if they are above what they were. But for the most part, I think everybody tried to keep this in line. As was mentioned during Jennifer Daly's presentation, a great deal of the money that we rely on, 30% of our budget, is sales tax. which is a good thing to keep in mind. You know, it's one of those things we don't really think about, but that is where the majority of our money comes from versus property tax, which the school relies on. A few other things that we look at are franchise fees, income tax, which we have seen increasing in the last few years. We have a natural gas utility tax that we tax upon ourselves when we tax Ameren. You know, anyone that operates in our right-of-ways, we tax them. And then, so for our property taxes, they compose 6.65% of the general fund budget. So if that gives you kind of an idea, you know, property tax 30%, or sales tax 30%, property tax about 6%. So overall, I mean, I think that that's kind of where we are. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if you want to hear from each of the department heads, let them speak for themselves.
Before we move on, are there any particular things that you'd like to highlight concerning your own operations? You have responsibility for tourism, for running the office. Is there something you might want to highlight to the group?
For the most part, I have the boring budget. So administration, we really don't do a lot. Our big purchase a few years ago was our accounting system. So we're pretty good. We'll probably be set for a while. Tourism, they have a balanced budget completely. You know what I mean? Anything that we expect to come in is balanced with anything we would expect to come out. The business district fund, I also oversee for, you know, we have the commission, but I'm also watching those dollars. And the only major thing that was budgeted was $75,000 in construction plan drawings, and that's if the Morton EDC can raise the $1 million by December. So that's the other major thing. And then I have the pension at the back. I oversee the police pension and the firemen's pension funds, which I don't see anything out of the ordinary for them. It's just really keeping track and making sure that the investments are being made and such. So really, mine's kind of the most boring of all.
Before we bombard you with questions, maybe we should hear from the other folks too. Moving right along, how about Mr. Spangler?
Under the community development, if you were to look on page 49 of 121, the only real change in my budget is listed under other professional services, and that's under the contractual services. And that's there's a $20,000 increase, and that's for, this is the year that we have to reapply for our enterprise zone status. And we are having a professional consultant do that for us because it's very important, we feel, for the community to have the benefit of the enterprise zone. And we get this shot at it, and we want to make it our best shot. And so we feel it's $20,000. It may not be quite that much, but it would be money well spent in an effort for us to secure one of the 49 zones that they're going to be reestablishing this year. And beyond that, mine is relatively unchanged, as you can see by looking. So I'll entertain any questions that you might have. And
okay. Chief?
Our budget is pretty much about the same as last year. We've dropped considerably. The main points that we've got are, one, our vehicle purchases, looking at two additional squad cars and one additional SUV, which will give us 2 SUVs on the street, 2 Tahoes in our command vehicles. We have the additional one, which is dedicated to the K-9. And then the other big expenditure up is $75,000 on a building. As many of you know, November 17th was not overly kind to the village itself. Wiped out our range tower, the tornado did, as well as a storage facility that we had there. So we're looking to rebuild that down there at our range so that we can function that. So outside of that, our budget is pretty minuscule.
Mr. Loudermilk,
All right, you ready?
go.
Here's,
Craig, before you start, can I
Yes.
just mention, on that building, we do have $72,000 in insurance reimbursement. We show it as expense, but it came into it came into our revenue this year, so you should all just be aware. It's really not that big of a difference in terms of cost to us, but we do need to replace it. Sorry, Craig.
oh, that's fine. Starting on page 53 of 121, first of 7 budgets here would be the Public Works Department, and this basically consists of myself, administrative assistant, GIS, and then the mechanic falls under this too. So just a few highlights here. This budget's down about 4% from FY14, basically from $336,750 down to $323,900. This is funded through the general fund, so this is one of those budgets that I tried to tighten up the best we could, and that's where the savings comes from. Couple items in here. We got a computer to replace, administrative assistant, and then another one that I wanted to expand on a little would be down under. This would be 8,300, which would be equipment under capital outlay. This is for the purchase of an iPad for ArcGIS Online. And basically, we want to move forward. This is something that we've been working on since I've gotten here at the village. This will allow us to not only save time in GIS, but this will allow people like Tony McMurtry, our sign guy, to go out and do a sign survey and make these changes to the GIS so that it's not duplicate work to where Jeff has to make the same change on there. So this is really the first step to hopefully roll out an interactive web version of our GIS, which will help, EDC, the chamber, you guys. Hopefully it will help save time for us too from all the phone calls, but it will allow you guys to go on the web and more of an interactive. Instead of going on there and looking at a map, you guys will be able to pull information off of there. So this is really the start of hopefully getting to that. So that purchase of the iPad will help us kind of get started in that direction. And that's about all I have for Public Works. Did any of you have any questions on that department?
Keep
Okay.
going.
Next one is streets. This also is funded through the general fund. We tried to tighten this up the best we can. Unfortunately, it just came up this year. We had some expenditures here. So this budget is actually up almost 24% from $1.493 million to $1.850 million. And I'll try to explain where that increase has come from. If you look at 5390 on your sheets, and this would be sheet 69. Other professional services increased about $24,000. I wanted to explain this item a little more. We hire USIC to locate our street lights, and this is dependent on any construction. ITV3 was a big hit on this line item due to all the work that they've done. Anytime someone calls Julie, we have to pay about $15, $16 a ticket for that. So that's the increase there. Also, we have to pay Julie also based on tickets. The next item down, 5720, street lighting has increased quite a bit. One thing to keep in mind is we're trying to meter new subdivisions. I think that's a good thing. For all of our main street lights down Main Street and all those that aren't metered, we're pretty much stuck with Ameren. We can't separate that and buy electricity like everybody else does where it's been deregulated. So unfortunately, we're paying an extra cost to Ameren for the purchase of electricity there. Next item where there was a significant increase is 6530. This would be basically the snow removal operation, and I wanted to expand on this a little bit. Basically, we used about 3,000 tons of salt this year. What that did, obviously, there's an increase of price there, but really we have an empty salt barn, so we're actually going to fill the salt barn up and budget our average amount starting in FY15. So that's an extra 80,000 from that extra salt we have to purchase. Next would be under capital outlay. We intend to upgrade our Co-Ray vac system in the 450 garage there. And basically these were installed in the 1980s. They're very expensive, parts are very expensive to replace, so we need to get in there and replace the tubing and control units on that. And that would be under 8,200. Under equipment, equipment and vehicle, the next couple here, we've got our cat backhoe, which is purchased under a 5-year buyback. So that'll be about $55,000 to replace that backhoe this year. We've also we're going to purchase a new paint striper, and it's about 15 years old, and then a new sign hammer under equipment. Under vehicles, this is the big item. This is our front line truck. We used it a lot this winter. It's truck 57. This is a 2000 Sterling truck, and the bed of the truck is steel. We're switching over to aluminum. Hopefully we can take these trucks a little farther, but it's in dire need of repair. So that's going to be about $150,000 to trade that truck in for a new one. That is about all I have on streets. So I will continue next to the gas department. I am on sheet 80. This budget is up about 10% from FY14. This is funded through the gas fund. The main items here, we have an increase. We do have an opening that we didn't fill this year. A lot of young guys. We really didn't want to spend the time training and all that because we still had a lot of work to get done. So this year we'd like to hire that person sometime here by May 1 or June 1. So there's an increase on there in the medical claims and salary because of that position. On 5725 would be natural gas purchases. This is the main increase on this budget, which is about $172,500. And with that, we're projecting to purchase 1.15 million MCFs of natural gas at about $4.65 in MCF. I mentioned that because that's about a 15-cent increase over last year. Next would be under capital outlay. Under equipment, I'll just highlight these real quick. This is obviously this equipment is very important to what we do in the gas department, but we plan to purchase 2 pipeline locators, 2 pressure recorders, and then most importantly a new gas model program. I want to highlight this. That's about $16,000. We have not had one of these. We have a similar program for the water. I feel this is very important to the future of the gas system here in Morton. And this will allow us, like Wendy mentioned, we're trying to be creative with that gas fund. In the history of the gas fund, we've always pulled that money over to supplement some other areas, specifically the general fund. While I have concerns with that, I think this will be the start of some much needed long-term planning, determine what the needs of the gas department are. And from that, just like my other enterprise funds, we intend to start transferring money over to the depreciation reserve, which we haven't done in the past. So that will help us to plan so that we're not taking money that's going to sacrifice the future of the gas company. Any questions on that? Under distribution and collection, this is for the main and valve replacements. This is the main area of our construction projects. Very important. And then under meters, this is our meter rotation program, where this year we intend to replace 30 meters. And this will be a continual thing, even with our planning. We've got to keep rotating this out. Most meters are planned for basically 20-year life. So we have a tremendous amount of assets out there in the system that we got to continually maintain and replace. Under other expenditures, just a couple notes on there. This is where we do have an item. This would be the $27,500 payment to economic development. And then we also Under interfund transfer, this would be under 9,900. That's the 520,000 that Wendy mentioned earlier for the vehicle and equipment fund. That's about all I have for gas. Next is wastewater. Wastewater, which starts on page 87. This year's budget is down about 3% from FY14. Just some of the main items, I'll just highlight a few items here. Under 5110 maintenance to equipment, this increased 27,000. We have some work to do on the, we have some digester valves that we need to replace. And then we got to provide some grounding at the Veterans Water Tower. I highlight that. I've talked to the mayor about a future need for fiber optics to plant number 2. This is something, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's something I'm working towards. This costs us a lot of money to be able to communicate from plant 2 to plant 3 at Veterans. So basically we have an antenna and then another antenna on top of the Veterans Tower. So we need to ground that for safety there. Under capital outlay, once again, a co-ray vac system in the Plant 2 garage is in dire need of repair, like streets. It was put in the 80s, so we have some money in there to replace that. Under equipment, under capital outlay, we intend to purchase a new TV camera console from our new for our new camera that we purchased. This will make it a little more interactive, easy to use. We're going to purchase a new push camera. And then also, you'll see this item come up in water treatment, but both departments, the SCADA, which is the main source of communicating with all the equipment, is on the same computer that we do our day-to-day chores on, and we want to separate those. We think it's in the best interest of both systems to do that. So we're going to buy a new computer to separate those in both departments, water treatment and wastewater. And then also, same as gas, this is the other section where we have the $27,500 payment to economic development. On to water distribution, which is on sheet 91. This year's budget in water distribution is down 8.6% from FY14. And one thing I did want to highlight is wastewater, water distribution, water treatment. Those are all funded through the water fund. Under capital outlay, we intend to purchase the following. A new computer for the superintendent, a new pipeline locator, and then we also have the 93 air compressor, which is basically use it until it drops, but it's over 20 years old, so we've left that in this budget. Under vehicle, this is the frontline pickup truck that we use. We budgeted $42,000 for that. Just keep in mind, this is our main truck. This is for water leaks, construction, so it's a very important vehicle here. Under distribution and collection, this is where we purchase materials for our distribution and collection system. So we have $80,000 in there to replace water mains. That's the end of water distribution. Next is water treatment. Water treatment is on sheet 95. This budget is down 3.5% from FY14. Under commodities, which would be 6110, we've budgeted an extra $10,000 there to remodel the laboratory. It's in dire need of. It's been there for 30, 40 years, and it's time to do an upgrade in there. Under maintenance supplies. Something different we're going to do this year. We had two line items for meters. This would be down in 8,800, which you'll see went from 15,000 to 0. We brought that 15,000 over into under maintenance of supplies, under commodities. So basically, that would be new and replacement meters will go out of the same line item. Under capital outlay, we intend to replace the Badger metering computer and software. This is about $10,500. And also, like I said before, purchase a new computer for the SCADA system. Under improvements, other than building under capital outlay, we have $30,000 in there. This is to install pavement and a new fence around the Veterans Water Tower. This is something that needed to be done, but with the Park District putting a new ball field out there, we think now is the time to provide a little more security to this location. We have a 100 by 100 permanent easement out there, and we're going to work with them and surround our water tower with a fence. And all of our other towers have fences around them. That's about all I have for water treatment. And the last budget, if I've still got you guys, is stormwater on page 101. This year's budget is down 7.3% from FY14. With that, I don't have a whole lot to add other than distribution collection. This is some of our more major work that we do, and we've budgeted $130,000. That's under $8,500, and that's for the water treatment plant detention basin. We're going to still do some work on the regional detention basin off Detroit Avenue. This is important as we get ready for the widening of Detroit Avenue in 2016. And then we also have some sump drain line replacements, one of which is on Hyde Park Drive. That is all I have. I'd be glad to answer any questions that anyone has. I apologize for boring you.
The Director of Emergency Services could not be with us tonight. Trustee Dobb is responsible for oversight of that group. Trustee, would you like to mention anything that's specific in that department?
Not particularly this time, except I think he's got a new ambulance in there, which we've talked about, or was talked about before I was even here, and I think it's time to get
Yeah, I
that.
think we were going to do it last year, and it got
Right.
moved over, so that's the most significant thing I think that's in there. Having heard from everybody, let's go through the trustees and see if anyone has any questions. But remember, we're not going to vote on this tonight. This is kind of a first reading of the budget. So if anybody has any questions over the next couple of weeks, just get on the phone and ask anybody anything you'd like to know. With that, let's just start with Randy. Do you have anything specific you'd like to ask tonight?
Well, with Jennifer giving the update and the presentation for the Economic Development Council, I thought it might be appropriate also, as we looked at what funding we have set aside for the organization. We got two line items in there, both one coming from gas distribution, I believe, and the other from wastewater.
Wastewater.
Yes, at 27.5. That's been similar, I think the same amounts the last couple of years that we've had, but there's also other initiatives out there that are gaining more attention at the regional level and at the county level, and I thought it might be appropriate to have some discussion or certainly some consideration to find out. I think it's a matter of time, not if, but when we'll be approached by others at the regional and at the county level for possible funding assistance as well for economic development. And right now, the funding that we have in there is to support, at least to date, is our local EDC. And I wanted to just bring that up for discussion to see what other thoughts from the board there may be.
Well, I guess what's the specific question on that?
Well, I think it's a matter of time that we're going to be approached with funding assistance, and we don't have anything in there right now other than funding for our local EDC. So I guess as we're planning our budget, it seems appropriate to give some thought to what, if anything, we're going to do there. Anything different?
Well, I know that one part of that is that there is no Heartland partnership. So as far as one of the regional part, that's defunct. So we don't a county-wide one, I guess, could potentially be there. But as far as a regional one, there's nothing that's going to be happening in the near future as far as that goes.
What about the FFC?
Well, from our standpoint, until that part of it comes through, I don't know why we would want, well, first of all, one of the things go back to is we have a 5-year commitment that we had put forth for the EDC, correct? And we're in the third year of that. This would be the third year of that part of it. So that would be one of the first things that I would want to look at. And as far as an investment goes of what we get back, I think it's all pretty clear that it's incredibly important to us that we are getting a big return for that money. So from that part of it, if we're looking at trying to put some other type of mechanism in there of additional funds for local, that would be something we could probably consider. But from my standpoint, I don't think, from other local or state farm, at this point, I don't think there's anything there. I don't know, everybody
Well,
else.
in fact, we're not budgeting for anything, and
Right,
I think that's what you're saying.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was my point.
from this, for this coming year, I don't foresee us needing to have a line item in the budget for this coming year. Next year, probably might want to look at something.
Trustee Belsley, have you got anything else, or would anybody like to comment on his?
I thought it was a very good question. I like the answer, not spending any more money.
No, I thought this was appropriate to have that discussion
Very
now.
good question.
Yeah.
Trustee Dobb?
I had a question that goes along with his. Just looking at the budget, and in fiscal year 13, we spent 5,000 more in this line item he's talking about, the EDC chamber, than we did the other years. And why did it go spike for 1 year and then come down?
Who's likely to, would the administrator know why that was?
Ginger and I had this talk where we went back and forth, and neither, it seems terrible. I knew we did it.
It was a special consideration that the mayor asked us to consider raising it one time.
Did the board vote on that then?
Yes, we did.
We did vote on it, I believe. I'm not sure I was at the meeting where, that's why it was a little hard for us to, come up with that. I don't know I don't know where the minutes are, if we found those or how that was, actually. I know it took us a long time to kind of figure out why, because I asked the same question.
Well, we've got a couple weeks, maybe we can track that down a little bit.
Yeah,
for you.
maybe we can locate those minutes or something. I asked the same question, and like I said,
Well,
it
whatever
was-
it
it
was,
was-
it was something special back then. We
It
didn't
was
do
a
We didn't do
special-
that for 5 years. It was just
Right.
special for that year.
and the board
Well,
agreed that we.
we'll get you a
would do
better
it.
answer.
Yeah.
than-
Jennifer, do you know why it was in 1 year? Do you have any idea?
Oh,
Waiting for that, so someone asked.
We had a situation at the economic development. Let me start by saying first that your funds are 25% of our budget. So our economic development budget, you invest and support about 25% of our budget. The other 75% of our budget is supported by private business. So we have about 55 investors, private businesses that contribute. And I will tell you that all of our surrounding communities think you guys are the smartest ones. They're all calling me to try to figure out how you got such a great deal of doing 25% where they're all employing and paying 100% of their economic development efforts through their city. So, in Morton, that's a great thing. We had, during that year, we're talking about a situation with a staff person who wanted to make some changes, and in making those changes, more of her time was put towards economic development, which in looking at the ramp up of projects and work was needed. And at the same time, we were finishing paying off a substantial loan. that was taken out to support the startups of the Economic Development Council. So we had one very tough financial year, and it was something that was unpredicted from the situation with the staff person and then finishing paying the loan. And in the discussions, I think with the trustees at the time and the mayor, in looking at the return on investment for the village, I think there was complete agreement that let's help the EDC get over this one small period of time that they're gonna have a tough time with that. So that is why that year, you guys increased your investment by $10,000 just for the 1 year.
Or was it the help
I
of
think-
the loan or the staff person? I mean, which was-
Staff.
It was our budget, our expenses were going to increase because of the shift with staff time. And we still had 6 more months to pay off this loan, which was costing us about $50,000 a year in loan payments. So then the loan was gonna be paid off. And so we had, once the loan was paid off, then funding was freed up to help support the additional cost for the staffing. But we had the segment of time in the 1 year's budget that we were really struggling to figure out how we were gonna make it work. And if anybody wants more details, just give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you further.
Does that satisfy you for now?
For now.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Trustee Hare?
Nothing?
Trustee Herman?
Nothing. I appreciate the work of the staff on this.
Trustee Kaufman?
Just one item. We lost our police training building down there, but we also lost our storage building. So we may possibly need a storage building for the wastewater treatment, gas, and streets.
Water distribution.
Water distribution, I'm sorry. Water distribution and gas. So I know we have the $200,000 fund for building additions. I thought we might possibly just change that title to buildings, because if the police building would go over $10,000, they could draw $10,000 from that fund. We've tightened this budget up so many places, there's no give room, and we have that fund for $200,000 that was set aside for building additions. I just liked it to be similar to our vehicle budget, that we have so much money in the fund for vehicles. I think that building fund should be for buildings, whether we end up building a building, buying a building for the storage building that at the present time we think there's a need to replace, because the police firing range building doesn't adequately replace the storage building that we lost. So we're short that storage building. So if the board decides in the next year to replace that, I think we need it in the budget. Whether we do or not, that'll all come up for a vote. So in talking to Craig and Wendy, we thought maybe possibly 50,000 out of the water treatment,
It'd be water distribution.
water distribution, and 50,000 out of the gas, and then 50,000 out of the general fund, which I would say would come out of this building fund. Because those utilities pay for themselves, so they could pay for their storage.
Was insurance paying for some of this too, though?
The insurance paid 72,000 for the whole building.
Okay.
I told Trustee Bells that he could have all that to build his firing range, which he needs. But now we're short, so we were trying to get through that firing range and come up with the cost.
But
So
are
we
you
think-
you're looking at doing something similar to what we were looking at with the vehicle fund, is going
Correct.
forward, is setting up a pool of funds that would be dedicated to building replacement cost. And-
We originally set it up for addition to the city hall.
Right.
But I think that fund should just be generalized, so as the things go, we can just kind of move it around a little bit. Hopefully, when this budget improves, we can put some money aside every year in that to build it up, to fill the village's needs, whatever that might be for the next 20 years.
And if I could expand on that a little bit
Yeah,
with the
that's-
three funds, that's something we discussed.
Correct.
with the building that went down, I'm figuring it was 40 to 50,000 was street, and the rest was police. And from my perspective, the location of that building isn't the perfect location for us. It's way out of the way. It is a police facility, but our little building on the side got, kids get in there, they pull back the siding. So for us, we would like something a little more centrally located that we can get to. It's where we put our plows and our mower decks in. So they need to be enclosed. What has come up is we also need space at 450 for gas and water. Street has slowly taken over some of that spot just because we don't have the space we need. There's a potential, if we found an existing building, that we could purchase that and use some gas and water, and that would allow street to get out of some of the space they occupy in the cold storage at 450. So that's some of the thinking behind that. Whether that's a new building or to find an existing building located near some of our facilities, that's kind of the background on why to use some of those other funds.
So I would just like that, I think it's wise planning to have in the budget, whether we spend it or not. I think we'll wisely make the correct decision. So I would like Wendy and Craig to come up with that in the budget to take care of that building. Then the other item, Village Administrator, the internal fund transfer in the gas fund. I'd like that also titled equipment or something in the future. Could you put, with that $520,000 transfer, could you put equipment? It's an internal transfer, I realize that, but as we all look back at that every year, because I always look at it, I like to be reminded. You look at that and it shows equipment.
Well, they're called an interfund transfer.
I know
That's
it
from the
does,
auditor.
but can't you put parentheses equipment or not?
Write it on your page.
Put a little asterisk by it.
I will write it into every report, Mr.
Thank you.
Feldman. No, I think we can figure that out.
I thought you could.
You getting all this?
You could put it into your electronic calendar that I'm sure you have, Jeff, to remind yourself
I
every
haven't
year
got
you
to
got
that
budget.
budget. That's why I missed a
Just an
couple
idea.
meetings this week.
Anything else?
Just one item, but I'll take care of that. That's great. No big deal.
Okay. I think we've had a good first crack at this budget. Everybody did a good job. I was frankly amazed at the job that all the staff did, and particularly the administrator. It was a very detailed budget, plenty of reading, plenty of good material. There are a couple of new things that we've heard tonight. One is we're going to, we've got water, gas, stormwater, and tourism all make their own incomes, but we're going to consolidate a fund for purchasing vehicles in the future. Wendy has done a nice review of what we're going to need in the future, and so we've sort of averaged that out. Also, another thing that really didn't come up, but several of us have been talking about is normally we buy vehicles based on mileage or based on a period of time. We've been thinking about maybe while we put them in the budget on that basis, we might want to have our mechanic, and we have a very good mechanic, take a look at some of these vehicles before we actually go out and get rid of them and get a new one. Let's take a look. Maybe we don't need to. So that's something we'd like to talk about at the next meeting. And then, of course, Trustee Kaufman has just suggested that just as we're doing with the vehicles and putting them all in one fund, even though we have 4 income streams, we're going to do the same thing with the building fund. So that we can maybe take a look at everybody's needs for building and space and facilities and do the same thing that you did for the vehicles in your spare time. And with that, I think we've had a good session. Unless there are any more questions, I will entertain a motion to go out of Financial Committee.
So moved.
Second, Belsley. Show of hands, yes? No, Dob wants to stay.
No.
Then I need a motion to adjourn the board
So
meeting.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good job, guys.